I don't know what it is sometimes, but these nuts be going kind of crazy, fam. And I think also, like, I see a video that they did when the guy was talking about the requirement for chi, and I definitely feel that there's definitely a difference in relation to the fleshlight and the process. Like the other day, the last nut was so dangerous, like in my mind state, like just like the process itself. Like, it's like there's a little bit of phobia or something, when you're going to nut. Because I think that being in VR and also having this like fake plastic vagina thing, fam, it just hits man differently in the head where like I really get lost in regards to my spatial awareness and my current presence. That the nut actually damages one's consciousness. Yeah, that's what I say. I think the body's worried because the body doesn't actually know nor understand what the body actually is. So when the nutting process occurs, it's quite bizarre in itself. Yeah, it's like the not being actually aware of like where it's actually presently located is what I believe is actually quite probably the most problematic thing in the whole scenario, because me not being spatially aware of where my consciousness is at a particular moment in time, I lose something, there's something that I lose. So for me, the other day was probably like the worst one. Like I had like the worst headache. Like it felt like a barrier had been crossed in terms of like the impact that it had on my self being. That was definitely quite detrimental. Um, yeah, that was probably quite detrimental in the most part because there was like this blockade or something like that. Yeah, and it just really just my consciousness felt exerted in one function or another. So that's one of the key issues, and I'm not sure if it's because there's a lack of chi energy, like the it's not actually reciprocal. Even if you're masturbating with your hand is different to when you're masturbating with one of these things. Um, and I think that also the experience has been very different depending on the situation, and this is why I needed the fucking the gravity blanket because it actually comforts me in some shape or form. So that would have been very helpful in this process, is what I tend to imagine, but I could be wrong in my assumptions. Um, because I feel that having that yeah, like a gravity robe would have been nice because I feel like having that would have definitely made things a bit more different. It would comfort the body, thus comforting the bloodstream. The blood as it moves, it circulates throughout the body, which is the key thing. Because for me, it was like even like like because sometimes like I get quite the blood flow gets quite bulky, you know, and also like I'm doing like these exercises to retain the semen or to retain myself from ejaculating. So then that becomes a bit more of a complication in that ejaculation process. Like there's already enough cum almost build up in the process, and then what you have is I have like these like these like ring dicks or these rubber dicks or these rubber rings for your dick that you can put on your piece, and then it makes it even like it prevents the cum from ejaculating, which makes it even more bulkier. So you become quite tense if you think about it. Like even like if you put that on, like let's say halfway through, or like at a point where you feel like you really need it, and then you put the cock ring on you. That's it. You put in the cock ring, and then that basically alters an aspect of the process. You know, and that becomes majorly problematic. Because yeah, that makes the piece harder. It makes the come less restricted to actually egress. Which is quite problematic in most instances. So I think that yeah, that's definitely an issue, for me personally. Maybe just me experiencing that for the first time, but it really felt, like, and I think it's just because there's an extended bit of blood, but there's also something else missing as well, and I think that's definitely the chi force, man. And I don't know how to totally understand that process. Maybe if I held it, it would give different effects based on the morphogenetic field of which the actual process is originating. But ultimately, man, and it was so detrimental that I even had to come and discuss this on here, because I felt as though, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that before, but it took a couple of days for the actual realization, or at least it took a couple hours for the realization of the nut to actually bypass. But then at the same time, I'm just like, I felt some type of damage in my brain, and my body felt tense. Just like coming, like my body felt quite tense, and that's quite worrisome to me at times. I don't really understand it, but it felt like clenched up, sort of worrisome, and I don't really know how to delve with that, but I think that's problematic. And I don't know if it's because that I have to be more aware, because even ejaculating with intention is quite difficult, because I don't know where the intention goes. I don't know what the I don't know what the what I don't know what I don't know what ultimately the intention should be, or where the intention ultimately should be placed, because sometimes it feels like my brain is not really in the same place, which is understandable, because I'm in the process of I'm in VR, right? And I've got this thing trying to mimic a vagina all plastered up and stuff, and it's not healthy for the brain, man. Sometimes I think so. I'm trying to figure out how to be more comfortable and less tense in relation to that. There could be other spiritual things going on in relation to that I don't fully understand or comprehend. So I think it's just a thing of just really exploring that and getting a greater insight into it in the long run. But it's time to just sort of share my experiences for anyone who might be sort of interested in this process and the whole mechanistic structure that I'm utilizing. It might have been also the weed that I was having that could have been a particular component, because I was actually high in that process. Normally I'm not high, so that could have added to the tenseness of the structure. So that was actually probably the main cause. Yeah, it's probably because I was high as well. So that probably was the actual main cause of the tenseness and lack of relaxation, and also the heightened environmental awareness of the body and mind through the smoking and whatnot, and the VR and all that type of stuff. It just sort of probably impacted me quite negatively. But I thought I'd share because it was actually quite negative. It was definitely quite detrimental. But hopefully, we'll find a hurdle over that. We'll find a way around that. Probably just because I don't really, I do meditate now and then, but I think that, fusing because I've definitely felt it before, where I've had like a meditative state, and the process was actually quite more relaxing, and I was more able to focus on aspects of my chakra and feeling the energetic flow of that within my body, and making sort of these visualizations that actually functioned really well. Moving up the awareness process into different parts of my body and different parts of my consciousness, which I found to be quite useful. So it varies, and I don't really know on what scale it varies, and what ultimately determines the mechanisms that can be utilized to ultimately increase the efficiency of whatever it is that I may be undertaking at a particular moment in time. Yes, it's also interesting, and I hope you may find this also interesting. Please leave comments or thoughts if you have anything that you feel be useful to share. As I'm sort of sharing this from my own experience with these on these Fleshlight adventures.